In today's video, we're going to talk about how Marilyn Monroe's estate ended up going to someone she apparently never met, what she could have done differently, and how you might apply those lessons in your own will or trust to make sure that your assets only go to the people you want. Hi, I'm Chuck Roulet. I'm an attorney licensed to practice law in Florida and Minnesota, and we help our clients preserve, protect, and pass on their home and life savings through custom tailored planning. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit the like, subscribe, and bell notifications to be updated when we post additional videos. And if you have a question on wills, trusts, healthcare directives, powers of attorney, estate tax planning, or how to protect your assets, make sure you post it in the comments below. I may answer that question in an upcoming video. So let's jump right in and talk about Marilyn Monroe's estate. Now, Marilyn Monroe's plan illustrates what can happen when you fail to control who actually inherits your estate. Now, the famous actress and model passed away in August of 1962, and she left the bulk of her estate to her longtime acting coach, Lee Strasberg. And at the time, Lee was married to his wife, Paula, who Marilyn knew, and it sounds like may have been close to. However, after Lee inherited everything from Marilyn, his wife, Paula, passed away. Lee then apparently married Anna Strasberg. Now, when Lee passed away, everything that he had inherited from Marilyn Monroe actually went to Anna, who Marilyn apparently had never met. And once Anna Strasberg inherited everything, she ended up making millions of dollars off of it. She ended up licensing Marilyn Monroe's likeness to companies like Mercedes-Benz, Coca-Cola, and others, and earning millions off of that. And in 1999, many of Marilyn Monroe's belongings were auctioned off for more than $1 million. In fact, some of the items that were sold included the dress that she famously wore while singing Happy Birthday to President Kennedy. And prior to her passing, Anna Strasberg eventually sold the remainder of Marilyn Monroe's estate to a branding company for an estimated $50 million. So the entirety, tens of millions of dollars of Marilyn Monroe's estate actually went to this woman who she apparently had never met. So what could Marilyn Monroe have done differently? Well, to start with, she used a will rather than a trust, so that put everything into probate. So she should have started by using a trust-based plan rather than a will. That would have kept everything out of the public eye. And the other really key planning tip here is that rather than leaving everything outright to Lee, she could have left it in an ongoing trust for his benefit. So the bulk of her likeness could have been left in a trust. Lee could have been the trustee, perhaps somebody else could have been the trustee, but that would have allowed Lee to benefit from the assets inside of that trust during his lifetime. And then after his passing, that trust could have been set up to go to the people or charities or causes that were important to Marilyn Monroe, rather than it ending up under the control of Lee's second spouse, Anna Strasberg. So how can you use this in your own planning? Well, the first thing to think about is I often counsel my clients to think about whether or not they want to leave assets outright to a surviving spouse. So one of the reasons you may not want to leave assets outright to a surviving spouse is perhaps you're in a state with an estate tax, such as the state of Minnesota. Or perhaps you're subject to the federal estate tax, where you're doing a two-trust setup for tax planning purposes. But even if you're not subject to the estate tax, you may want to think through whether you want to leave assets outright to a surviving spouse. So if you were to pass away and you leave everything outright to your surviving spouse, what happens if they remarry? If they remarry and they pass away, it's possible that those assets end up going to their new spouse and that new spouse's family, rather than maybe benefiting your family, as it did in the case of Marilyn Monroe's estate going to Lee, her acting coach, and then to Lee's second wife, Anna Strasberg. So stop and think, how would you feel if your retirement accounts, your home, your beach house, the lake home, a family farm ended up going to somebody that you never knew or would want those assets to go to? particularly if perhaps that beach house, that lake home, that family farm was something you inherited from perhaps your folks or your family. So how would you feel if the family farm or the lake home that you inherited from your parents, you pass away, it goes to your spouse remarries, passes away, and then it goes to your spouse's, new spouse's family rather than staying within your own family. And even if your spouse never remarries, it's entirely possible that if your surviving spouse were to need long-term care or nursing home costs, that those assets could end up being turned over to the state or lost to the state to pay for care. Whereas with proper planning, those assets could be shielded in the event a spouse were to need nursing home or long-term care costs. So again, Marilyn Monroe lost the bulk of her estate to somebody she didn't meet, and it's a good planning lesson. So maybe think through whether or not you would want to leave assets outright to a surviving spouse. Instead, you might want to consider leaving them in a trust for the benefit of your spouse so that they can't be lost to a remarriage scenario, or doing an additional round of planning to potentially shield those assets from long-term care and nursing home costs. So if you would like to learn more about wills versus trusts, healthcare directives, powers of attorney, how to protect the assets you leave behind, as we talked about today for a surviving spouse or maybe your children and your grandchildren, I'm going to be holding a free online masterclass. There's a link in the description below. Again, it's completely free. Just log in with your email. We'll talk about some of these items in greater detail. And in fact, I'll be revealing some of the planning strategies I use with my private clients as well. So again, free online masterclass, a link in the description below. And if you would like to learn more about how you can protect your home and life savings from long-term care and nursing home costs, we've written a free consumer guide, and there's a link in the description below where we talk about some of the planning strategies you can use to shield your home and life savings from long-term care and nursing home costs. So again, I hope you found this video helpful, and we look forward to seeing you in an upcoming video. Be well.